To another exciting episode of Torreshasenteredthechat Chat. I'm your host, Brian Torres, with my co-host, Crystal Torres. We have a special guest with us today. It's Ronnie Gonzalez, poet, author, writer, and best friend. Without further ado, we're going to dive back into Purity Culture, our miniseries from the Holy Ghosted series we've been working on. You want to take us away?
Sure. Just to kind of recap from last week's conversation, for anyone who doesn't know what the concept of purity culture is, I'm just gonna read off of like Google, and it says purity culture trauma refers to the negative psychological and emotional effects that individuals experience due to the rigid and often shame-inducing teachings of purity culture, which is a movement emphasizing sexual abstinence before marriage, particularly within Christian communities. And this is a big topic. It's super broad. It's like all encompassing because it does focus on sexual abstinence, but it kind of just like infiltrates every aspect of your life. And I liked when we were chatting last week and we talked about how it even infiltrated like your musical styles and like how it was like conflicting, being, a Christian musician growing up in the city and like having to adhere to like Christian standards of music and,
right.
and worship and all that kind of stuff. And
which I'm sure Ronnie can relate to because that's what our episode was about last time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a really great segue into just the purity culture concept. And we talked about, what is purity culture, how traumatized we are, how therapy and counseling really helped us come a long way, and how we're breaking generational cycles and generational curses with our own kids because we don't want to raise them to be afraid of exploring just their own sexuality and their own, just being themselves and there's,
and finding their place.
Right. And finding their place in the world and
within
knowing
themselves.
How to operate in personal relationships.
How to have boundaries.
Right. So that's kind of like the recap from last week. And we really wanted you, Ronnie, to jump in because I just thought of you immediately. I was like, I know we'll have like such a fun conversation with you because we're all in the same boat. And it's tough growing up Pentecostal.
Yeah.
God, painful.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into some of the, the concepts and whatnot. So you want to take us into this first concept?
Okay. So the first question that we dove into was, as a church kid, what were you indoctrinated with concerning purity?
All right. So let's get to the easy part of this. Obviously, born and raised in a Christian environment, especially the Pentecostal context, which is even worse. Expected to grow up. Around 12, 13, you get baptized, right? And then, of course, because again, Pentecostal context, do the speaking in the tongues thing, and then eventually you're on your way to ministry, and eventually you get married. And then the expectation is you wait until you get married to have sex.
That's true.
Now, Here's the problem, right? This was pushed on all of us. This isn't a 90% thing. This is a 100%. This is shoved down your throat. Even when you're like 12, 13, like, for crying out loud, my hormones are just awakening up. My parents haven't even given me the talk of the birds and the bees or the bird is the word, whatever. Like, I'll be honest, my parents never actually gave me the talk about sex.
Right.
They didn't.
Yeah. We discussed that. We had
like a whole
segue into
that too. Yeah.
So my experience with that is my dad was like, "Don't get no one pregnant, don't be gay, and you'll be fine."
Right?
Yeah, for real.
I'm sorry, Dad, but kind of have to put you on blast on this one.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I mean, the latter was an issue because, I'm not attracted to other men. I'm only attracted to women. So, plain and simple. But the thing was the whole way into marriage. And the thing is how Christian media really try to push this. Like, I remember songs from KJ52 where he was rapping about, how like, you shouldn't feel ashamed for being a virgin. I'm like, bro, I don't want to hear this shit. Bro, some of us are grown up, but we're trying to just live life. I'm a teenager. I ain't thinking about fucking nobody. You know what I'm thinking about? Playing video games, having a good time, forming friendships.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, okay. Hormones are waking up. Titties look nice, and so does booty. But I'm a titty guy, so there's that. Let me get that out the way, folks.
Oh my
Um, I'm all about the big titty club, big titty army, all the way. Anyway,
funny.
Let's include Ronnie. This was why, right here. This is comic gold. I love it. Go on, though.
so
But it's true. It's funny because you talked about like it. Just to snip right in the middle of that, you said something, and it brought something to memory. You said that like at that age, you weren't really thinking about that, and coming from a household where, in my case, like I was surrounded by like older women, and all they talked about was sex. And mind you, these are like Christian women, and it was a very hyper-sexualized environment. And I'm like, okay, so in my case, all I thought about at that age was sex. And it's crazy because I'm like, how are you supposed to hold me to that standard when you're over here talking about the birds, the bees, the this and that, and then what holes go where? And I'm like, geez, Louise. I'm like, man, this is gonna be pretty hard.
Not to mention,
I'm sure there's a conversation in there somewhere where they talk about how a lot of dudes don't know where the fucking clitoris is, which I don't know how that's hard. But
hey, look,
it's not that hard to figure out. Come on now.
There's all kinds of forums out there, like dudes can figure it out. Yeah,
that's Reddit for you. So it's like with my parents, there wasn't really much of a discussion about it. And if anything, the only family member that really had somewhat of a conversation with me about it was my uncle, who taught me how to play guitar from the very beginning.
Yeah,
he had some conversations, and like, because I remember one time I was like, because people were protective of me. Like, yeah, at this time I was a 5'10" teenager, 200 plus pounds or whatever. So it's not like anyone was going to jump me or anything, or anyone was going to take advantage of me. I wasn't like this skinny, frail dude that a female teacher could take advantage. But, when it comes to girls, you never knew. But they also understood how naive I was and how I could have been easily fooled by a girl back in the day.
right.
Now, not so much. But I remember telling my uncle, I was like, man, I don't need protection. He's like, wrong. You need protection. And then he gave me this whole conversation about that, and gave me even diagrams of some things that are good to do when you're getting down and things that are complete no-nos.
So let me ask you now.
Yes.
Your uncle, would you say, was he like a member of the faith or no? Because it's funny that somebody looked out for you, but it wasn't the people in your immediate circle.
The hard answer is no. He wasn't part of the faith community.
You see what I'm saying? It seems like people who are outside of the culture of the church culture have your best interests at heart more than people within, and that's crazy sometimes.
And the funny thing was that he was seen as somewhat of a troublemaker, and yet he was looking out for me. He was a good broski in that regard. And then even my aunt from my mom's side, who I would say she was kind of like in the middle of the loop of it all.
Right.
From my mom's side, she was also one that actually had a conversation with me. It was just weird that my mom didn't really have much of a conversation with me about it, or my dad. They were just like, hey, just don't get no one pregnant, use condoms, blah, blah, blah. And that was it. That's not much of a conversation to have. Like, I know one day my daughter's going to ask me about this stuff, and I'm going to have a conversation with her. Her mother's going to have a conversation with her. And the thing is, the purity culture thing was all waiting until marriage to punch in your V card.
And it's like, we don't know what we're waiting for because we're taught all this fearful crap around it.
And then to this, there were times where like even other Christian artists and other folks they were like, oh, if you wait till marriage, the sex is gonna be the best. Bro, we got a 50% divorce rate. 50%.
Right.
Right? And among half of those Christian couples, I wonder why. Number one.
I feel like it's all the fear like they put so much fear in our heads. Like I was telling Brian last week about how I was such a scared, like timid. I was afraid. I was like so like just in my own head all the time because I witnessed a family member who got pregnant at 15. She came home pregnant and they received her like so poorly. And it was just all hell broke loose. You're going to hell. You're this, you're that. You're a whore. You're this. Mind you, I'm like 9 years old. I'm our daughter's age, 9 years old, witnessing this. And I've already been indoctrinated since the age of 3 in the ways of Christianity and Pentecostalism. So I was freaking terrified. So for me, it was just all about fear. I had no idea like about anything except if I so much as look at a boy, I'm going to hell. You know?
I remember how, and just to add a little bit more to that, how back in the day, how they had standards on young ladies when it came to dressing. Like, oh, your skirt had to be no lower than beneath. I mean, no higher than beneath your knee. For
Right
someone
here.
that had a problem with bangs, with no cutting your bangs, this, that, and the third, right?
And do your eyebrows.
Can't do your eyebrows. So everyone had a unibrow. And then the men were not allowed to have goatees. Not even.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, my gosh.
Goatees were forbidden. Beards, forbidden. Clean shave, great. Mustachio, that's fine too. I'm like, but then here's the thing. It didn't matter if a girl, had a skirt underneath, the knee. Listen, we were teenagers. You know this, Brian. Girl had a rocking body. She had a rocking body. Biology is biology. Us teenage boys, that pecker, if we felt something, we felt something. It don't matter if he had a cleavage off or if it was censored. If you got a shape, you have a shape. That's why, like, no matter how they were like, oh, I gotta be, because I'm like, listen, the only way you have a possible guarantee that a girl's not gonna show something off to tempt a guy is if they dressed in very loose clothing, like a nun. And even then, you got people out there wanting to fuck penguins. So there's that.
Yeah.
So I love that you just brought that up about like the clothing and stuff.
Yeah.
Because one of our questions that we talked about last week also was what are some of the double standards that you've heard about or experienced yourself concerning Christian purity teachings?
Yeah, and you brought up the skirt thing. That was a good example of that.
Yeah, that was like a whole thing. Of course, obviously, you didn't meet me till after high school, so I was already wearing jeans.
Yeah.
Like I had all
these jean skirts. I mean, jean skirts are the Pentecostal calling card of women. So
yes, but all throughout high school, and even like right before I met Brian, like it was all long skirts. Very, very, and not just that, but just like very low self-esteem. I couldn't feel pretty. I couldn't feel like myself because we were taught that if you're catering to the flesh, you're catering to your desires and yourself, and that in itself is also evil. You can't feel good about yourself. You can't, because then that's stroking your flesh, and that's bad. Then you're going to hell.
So what are some of the experiences you've seen like in church regarding that?
Well, the double standard obviously is when it comes to women with the skirts, the blouses, and the issue of cleavage. That, and then also tightness of clothing. See, with men is a little different because usually men we ain't trying to show off our a cleavage. We ain't got nothing to show off there in that regard.
Unless you get a something.
And the only way a young man was gonna have to worry about bringing temptation to a woman was if maybe they wore like a V-shirt and like it showed off their pec muscles a little bit, and even then that's
Or if they wore the really tight dick print pants, like
yes,
That's what
if
I'm saying.
that.
If you go to Hillsong Church,
you go to Hillsong Church, yeah, basically.
I mean, from what I saw, the few times we visited, like back in,
Nothing
like,
impressive there, I guarantee you.
wait, what do you say?
He said nothing impressive.
I'm just saying, like
I
10
assure
years
you,
ago, like the last time we ever went there, that I was just like, wow, the guys dress differently here.
look, as a man that worked in the gym industry as a janitor for half that time, more than half that time, I assure you, I've seen it all. I've seen it all. And let me tell you, ain't nothing these Hillsong motherfuckers got that's special. Um, I guarantee you, I've seen every dick, shape, size, texture, girth against my own will. But
Could you imagine they're tying him down and they're just flashing him
Oh
in
my
succession?
gosh.
like, sorry, I'm like, whoa, nah, not my thing. Sorry.
All right.
Oh,
So
and then that's the other thing. So again, sticking to purity culture, the whole waiting till marriage. Here's the thing: it's a huge gamble. It's a huge gamble. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some of us that waited until marriage and they're still married. They got kids. They got a happy life, happy house, happy spouse, blah blah blah.
They're rare. Those are rare. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's even still like there's a lot of other stuff that comes with that because it's like, okay, what about sexual chemistry? What about like little things like that you have to work on in therapy? And then there, like you're saying, there's people who didn't, and they have different experiences, and to judge them based off those experiences is terrible. Like people have passed. What if they were promiscuous before they met Christ? You know what I mean?
Yep. And then that's another thing where like be like, oh, she's not a virgin. Oh, she's no good then. What? And then what about the dude? And that's I can say is a double standard that existed
Oh yeah,
because
absolutely.
apparently the premise was only women can be virgins, men can't. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I think men can be virgins too. It's called
Well,
not
it
having busted
carries
their
more
first nut.
weight. It carries so much more weight if like if a girl or like a young woman loses their virginity over versus if a man does.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all of a sudden a girl is seen as like used goods.
Yeah, she's a harlot, she's a slut, she's a hoe, she's a whatever. It's like, and it's like it's just so disgusting and it's so unfair that, women have to be seen in that way. And we're it's ingrained in us, you know.
Yep,
It's
and
just
then
it's fully ingrained in us, and it's and how we're treated and how even we look at ourselves,
yeah, that and when it comes to the men, the young boys, we would see it as like listen, I'm gonna be straight. A lot of dudes, especially when we were teenagers, there were a lot of them running around, hoeing around. I'm hoeing around, and then but the thing is, the only time someone had something to say about them was if they knocked someone up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The sad part is, and this kind of goes to something you mentioned earlier, a lot of this you know, pent up stress that the young ladies were experiencing ended up contributing to a lot of like, oh my God moments after they hit 16. If we're going to be open and frank about it, almost 80% of every girl that hit 15, 16, or even 17 in church, it wasn't a matter of time before they got knocked up before they hit 18.
That's because nobody's teaching them anything.
Right, and I do remember that was he's right about
and
that.
It's very common, yes.
That was very common in the Pentecostal church.
Yeah, a lot of girls would get pregnant and then they would disappear from church because people would treat them like shit.
Yeah.
People would judge the hell out of them.
Yep.
And nobody's educating anybody on how to do anything.
If the church got involved, they would force them to get married.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right, yeah.
And it's like not everyone is forced to get married.
They were forced to get married. Yep.
A lot of forced marriages. Yep. And not only that, in the process, a lot of adultery afterwards.
Yeah.
Some of it will be kept in the dark, and then eventually when it came out to the light, everyone acted surprised. Like, bro, like, what? And then you have to ask yourself, what the fuck is going on at home that the parents aren't, like, sitting down talking to them? I guarantee you, I can bet my left nut on this and take it to the bank with every last sperm I can donate. good majority of them, the parents weren't sitting down talking to them about sex
Not at
and
all.
sexual health and even awareness and why it's important to not just, drop your dong on anyone or open yourself up to just any other dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then even worse, if let's say the child, let's say they're a teenager, they're having their hormones and their personality develop, and they realize that they may be sexually attracted or just even romantically attracted to someone of the same sex.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, heaven forbid. Like,
So
you
imagine,
know,
They
imagine
get
someone.
ostracized. They get
you get kicked. You
practically
get kicked out
lynched.
of your house. Like that's
Yeah.
it. Like you can't live here anymore. Like
It's funny you brought that up because we were talking about that organization known as Covenant House, where they take in people who were kicked out of young teens who were kicked out of their homes because the church or their family members who were church people kicked them out because they were gay,
right.
or they had just inclinations, or they were even talking about it, and that place was like a safe haven for people who were kicked out. And it's a shame that it takes an external organization to have that kind of mindset
Exactly.
about people that they should be caring
And
about
church
in the
is
church.
supposed to be seen as like a safe place and God loves you and yada yada. Oh, but God only loves you up until a certain point. And if you don't go by our standards, then you get the shit kicked out of you and you don't have a place to live anymore. Everybody turns their back on you and you're screwed.
And the church, no members could talk to you anymore because that's sacrilegious.
Right.
You're tainted and you might infect other people.
Then there's also the fact that, like, for example, if a woman isn't married up to a certain point, they're seen as a jamona.
Oh my God, yeah. Then there's that. Yep.
And then, but then there's
across the board that goes though. Is it that like just like a Hispanic Latino thing, or is that like?
to my knowledge, to my knowledge, yes. Now, if we go the other side of the coin, if the dude hasn't been married by like 25 or has been seen as single for a while, they're automatically suspected as being gay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, I remember that. I was like, bro, people thought I was gay. I was like, the fuck? Where y'all getting that from? Maybe my ass isn't thinking about pussy or getting married right now. I got other problems on my mind, and that is not one of them.
Maybe it's the shirt.
I don't know. To this day, I'll never understand where people got that perception from, because I was like, bro, yeah, sitting here thinking about me possibly looking at other dudes. Meanwhile, my ass is looking at a sexy ass guitar at home.
Yeah.
Playing strings. That sound
we were
like
always talking about guitars back then. I remember that. That is so true. We'd be like, yo, Ibanez just rolled out this new spot. Yo, how many times did we talk about
the
that?
Jackson Kelly, the new PRS,
He could tell you. We would look at catalogs and like circle which ones we'd want, like kids looking at a toy brochure.
Yep.
Bro, we were like white dudes at the Jacob Javits Center looking at cars that they know they're never gonna buy. That was us. And then anime, video games, manga.
Yeah.
Like, bro, but then again, it's a cultural thing because let's be real, majority of people in Pentecostal Latino churches, the dads weren't into anime, they weren't into video games. It was just the Lord and the Lord only, and only sex if you're married.
Yeah.
And then and also, and I had a conversation with another friend about this, the pressure of waiting till marriage. And then here's the thing. Got a lot of sexually frustrated kids, teenagers, guys and girls. Like, you had girls that were like, "Oh, I'm waiting for the one." Meanwhile, she's banging some dude outside of church that's from the hood. And then, meanwhile, you got some dudes that are like, "Yo, I'm trying to find the one." And meanwhile, the only one that'll give them a time of day is the girl that's low key wicked.
Yeah.
It's rough.
It's like a breeding ground for disorder and chaos
and like unhealthy
relationships,
unhealthy, like no knowledge of
and unrealistic expectations too.
Yeah,
this is why, and I'm going to say this to the camera. Parents, you need to start giving a crap about your kids. You need to start talking to your kids, because these are the kind of topics that come up.
Age appropriate
conversations.
Age appropriate. Like we were talking about how we've had the talk with our girls in a very 7 and 9 year old age appropriate way, but they know, and I feel like talking to your children empowers them, because here's another problem that comes with like not educating your kids. When if and when the time ever, hopefully never, but like if your child is ever sexually assaulted in their life, they need to be able to articulate what happened. And they need to feel like they have a voice to say what happened, instead of bottling it up inside for like their whole life. And then when they're like 35 and they're like 3 failed marriages deep in their life, and they don't know why they can't have proper intimacy with their partners, like this is why you need to talk to your kids in an age appropriate way and look out for your kids, and like not do this church shit where it's like, wait till marriage and we're not going to tell you why, and it's just sinful if you feel feelings in your private parts, and you can't masturbate, you can't, there's no way of release, there's nothing, you just have to hold it all in until you find the one. Like
it's a recipe for disaster.
It's just image destruction. Like don't masturbate, bro. Listen, I low key was unleashing hell in the shower.
Everyone was. That's the thing. They're like, oh, don't do it.
There was a time where it wasn't at all.
Take you to hell. Cut it off.
Gosh.
Like, what?
Like, no. I was there was a point where I did not touch my ding-a-ling at all. And then one day, I want to say it was like an hour and a half before it was time for a church service where we had a gig. And I was like, you know what? I'm unleashing hell. I just unleash the dragon and let the shower drain have it.
I'll cover my ears.
I was horrified, to be honest with you. I was like, whoa. It felt good, but I was like, whoa.
No, but how do you think all of that affected your self-esteem? Like the whole purity culture and just that whole...
I feared becoming a 40-year-old virgin. I feared becoming a 40-year-old virgin. Because most of our peers, they lost their virginity as a teenager or in their early 20s.
Right.
Thankfully for me, I lost mine at 25. So, I managed to succeed, especially because when I saw the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin, I was like, oh, hell no.
But you see what you're saying, though? Like, why do you feel like it's something that you succeeded at? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what the church does to you. Like, with this whole purity culture, it's like, it puts these like standards that you don't even need to worry about. You know what I'm saying?
Like, we understand not having teen pregnancy and whatnot because there are actual repercussions for that. We're not advocating for teen pregnancy. We're just saying that if you want to express yourself in a physical way, it's okay. It's not wrong to want that because that's a normal bodily function.
We're not advocating for like having unprotected sex with like every person you meet, but like definitely not.
Right, but if you meet someone that you feel like you can be intimate with in
like a healthy way, yes.
Get a condom. Get many condoms.
You can do that.
Hell, there are multiple ways of contraception available, at least until the U.S. government decides to go full Big Brother. But that's not the point. The point is, like, you want to educate your kids. Be like, hey, listen, if you have feelings for this person and it's really going to get, to a certain point, be smart. Don't be a fool. Wrap your tools.
So to kind of, I don't want to say wrap it up, but to give a kind of a final disposition about this. If you had to talk to 16-year-old you, what would you tell yourself? What kind of advice would you give 16-year-old you? Like, you have to pretend you're not you and you're a stranger to old you. Go.
Listen, kid, live your life. Do your thing. That girl that you like, don't feel guilty. Go for it. If she says, yeah, cool. Just be responsible. If she don't like you, that's okay. She's not the first and she won't be the last. And vice versa.
So do you think like that you'd give yourself more like self-esteem talks or like?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And even now, when it comes to like some of my coworkers who are also in their young 20s, like I'm finding myself giving them advice. Even kids that are customers at my job, same thing. I'll be like, listen, don't do this to yourself. Don't raw dog it. No. Let's say she gets pregnant and can't afford an abortion. Or let's say they keep the kid, but then things don't work out between y'all two. That's a whole lot of chaos.
Yeah.
Up your fool, wrap your tool. Don't feel pressured. And not only that, pace yourself. There's no marathon. Like, there's no marathon when it comes to the sexual experience. Enjoy yourself. Take your time.
Yeah.
You'll
Yeah.
love yourself better in return.
We were always taught, like, in this whole purity culture indoctrination, like, it always just seemed like, oh, be fruitful and multiply. That's like all we were taught about sex. Like,
Yeah.
we have to bring godly offspring into the world. Our responsibility as Christians, part of it is we pair up, we get married, and we have babies so that we can bring them up in the ways of the Lord. Like that's we were never taught of anything outside of that. Nothing healthy about intimacy, nothing healthy about understanding your partner, nothing healthy about loving yourself first, and stop being your own worst critic. Because if you don't have a healthy sense of self, you're not gonna have a healthy way of and Christianity doesn't let you, like, learn about those types of things, because they just control you with the fear aspect. And it's so hard to, what was I saying? Like, what Ronnie was mentioning, you were mentioning about, like, the divorce rates. And it just kind of brought to mind, like, how those things happen because we're not taught
How to have those conversations and how to approach
Yes.
those conversations with our loved ones,
Mhm.
even within the church, even without the church, even the home.
Yeah, and they're not easy conversations to have, but they're the ones you need,
Mhm.
especially with family. The other thing, and I did want to add, is how whatchamacallit, there's also how that part of the sexual purity culture also affected a lot of us when it came to teenage life, when it came to our goals, our marker points in terms of how our lives are supposed to play out.
Yeah.
So I explained this to a friend of mine how, you know, usually growing up, this is literally the timeline that seems to be the expectation, right? You're born, you're born in the church, you're raised, you get baptized at 12, 13, you do the shamalama ding dong, hormones happen, but you finish high school, assuming you meet the love of your life during high school and into your college years, you graduate from college, you get married, you get your job, you have kids, and then you just start the cycle all over again. Like,
Mhm.
it's like, and the thing is, like, bro, it's like whoever thought imposed this type of mindset to all of us in a Latino Pentecostal environment, they didn't seem to get the memo. Life does what it likes to do, and
Mhm.
and quite frankly, it doesn't care, right? Sometimes it's like, huh, yeah, you think life's gonna turn out that way? Watch this. You
Yeah.
got women today who they were in church and everything, teenagers that got raped, they got rape and incest,
Yeah.
um, and all sorts of things that may have happened in between. And then you got some of us that, not me, but some of us did make it past high school. And then some of them, of course, teenage pregnancies happen. So guess what? High school dropouts and condemnation, within their community and whatnot. And it's tough, you know. And then also the fact that whatchamacallit, the whole concept of, how you need a piece of paper to validate, otherwise you're in formication. Yeah, I just made that word up.
Yes.
Like I told a friend of mine last night, like I told her, I was like, listen, if you really want to get biblical with it, yeah, tapped it, yeah, married it.
Yeah.
That's how it was. And then the weird part is all this sexual tension and repression in a church environment. Yeah, you got a whole book, the Song of Solomon, or a homeboy talking about titties and everything.
Yeah.
That's what was the final thought that I was, thank you for saying that. Because what I was saying, I kind of, like, stumbled a little bit in the beginning because I kind of lost my train of thought. But the tension and the buildup and the not being able to express yourself, it just, like, really fucks up your ability to have proper intimacy with your partner. And that's what the final thought was, like, as this thing cut off earlier. Um, Purity culture just, like, gets in the way of all of that. It just, like, because we're kept in the dark for so much, and we're just taught that everything is so taboo, and we have to please the Lord and do everything, you know, because God is watching everything, and you're going to go to hell if you have a single impure thought, or if you just look at somebody, you know, what's considered the wrong way. You know, we repress all of that. We bottle it all up. And then when we finally get married or whatever, it's so sad how there's so many issues that are like easily avoided, that could have been easily avoided if we had just been educated properly, and instead of being taught that everything is taboo and everything is evil and we're all going to hell, and, you know, in paint jars in a handbasket because, you know, we looked at a girl or a guy and thought that they were cute.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, I like what he brought up about markers in life that were, I guess you could say, lost because they never. What would be better for a person, an individual human being, than for them to be successful economically and before having a family, let's say? Like, what if they were a little more established and you're like, hey, instead of like, what if the conversation went a little bit more about, hey, I know you want to be in relationships, but maybe hold off until you get some more money in your pocket, you know, be a little more established, finish, you know, have, if that was more the conversation, I think that would be more productive. You know, and granted, you're going to go on dates. You're going to go in the middle of all of that. You might find the person that you're meant to be with. You might find somebody that not accommodates, is a good match with you.
But how, that's the other thing though. I'm glad that you said that, because how the heck are we even supposed to know when we're even taught that, like, you remember that book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye?
Yeah.
Like, remember that whole fad of like you couldn't date.
Christian
it
garbage.
was courtship, and like you
We're
had to
the same shit.
have your own group dates, and like, how are you supposed to meet somebody like that? Like, none of it makes sense. Like, all of this purity culture is just like, it just pulls you back from like really experiencing anything. Like, how are you gonna find your partner like that?
Right.
Like, I don't know.
I've gone from being the brown nosing ass kisser purity culture to be like, listen, here's some condoms. You want to fuck? Fuck.
I mean, I'm not saying run rampant either, but, you know, like, it's so ass backwards. It's just so ass backwards.
Yeah, and then the scary part is that, like, especially down here in the South, it's even worse. Like, imagine that sexual repression in a Hispanic Pentecostal environment up north.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like an expanded world of DLC down south in the Bible Belt South, where it's like, bro,
Really that
really?
bad out there?
And then not only that, the lack of sex education down here too. So it's
Wow, yeah.
like I had a conversation with a coworker where, you know, they raw dogging it. Her boyfriend. I'm like, girl, I strongly suggest you, and I'm just saying this not just as your coworker, but as a friend. I was like, you might want to strap up or get a birth control, one or the other, because let's say things don't work out with him, and then you're pregnant, and then also depending on the state you live in, access to Plan B or abortion may be restricted, and then we're in Florida.
Right.
It's actually worse. So it's like I told her, I was like, be safe. Like, listen, if you need some condoms, let me know. I still got a whole 20 packs sitting in my closet. And their expiration date is 2029.
I was just gonna say, make sure they're not expired.
Oh, I check expiration date, and I usually tell people, men and women, I was like, check the expiration date, and also make sure there's no holes in it, because there are some shicey people out there that will try to fuck you up.
Yeah, they want some of your greatness.
Do you want to start wrapping it up?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. All right.
So, Ronnie, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you coming through and expanding on the whole purity chat.
Yes.
This has been fun, and we're definitely going to have
this was a great part too.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have you back for more fun and more conversations.
Yeah.
And to our guests and our listeners, thank you for joining us. This has been a fun part of this series. You know, stay with us as we continue diving into Holy Ghosted, the miniseries.
Oh, one more thing too. Like, if anybody else feels like joining in on the conversation, please let us know. We would love to have more guests on our little chat room here.
Right. So slide into our DMs for Torres Has Entered the Chat Instagram. You can go into that DM or on Threads.
It would be great to have because I really like this dialogue, like with I like talking to you, but like it's really nice to add like another person to the conversation.
Absolutely.
And it's just fun to have more opinions and more thoughts like mixed in.
So Ronnie, thank you for joining us.
Yes,
and to our guests, thank you for also joining us. Have a wonderful day.
All right, take care.